I was driving late one night in my battered 1979 Honda Accord, taking one of those aimless detours, when I found myself lost on a maze of two-lane back roads. In search of directions, I pulled into a lonely gas station, where the dim interior was lit by harsh fluorescent lights and the hum of refrigerators filled the air. A young cashier, barely past his teens with a few pimples on his face, was busy shoving a bag of snacks and a pack of cigarettes into a plastic bag. I explained that I had taken a wrong turn and needed help getting back to the main road. Although he teased me about still using a paper map in this day and age, he managed to point out our location, a few miles outside a small town, and showed me the route to the highway. With my directions noted and my purchase paid for, I stepped back out into the cool night. Soon after, my friend Craig joined me in the car. We had always enjoyed our late-night drives together, relishing the quiet and the unexpected adventures that came with the darkness. That night, however, as we merged onto the winding road, an unsettling feeling crept up on me. A strong sense that we were not alone. At first, the drive felt peaceful. The engine's steady purr, the distant chirps of crickets and the rustle of leaves all came together as a gentle soundtrack. But as we ventured deeper into the darkness, the familiar sounds of the countryside were slowly replaced by an eerie silence. The road stretched out before us with no other cars in sight, and the moon was hidden behind dense, swaying trees. An unexplained feeling of being watched settled over me, and every shadow seemed to move with a life of its own. The first sign that something was wrong came when a figure suddenly appeared on the road ahead. I slammed on the brakes in a desperate effort to avoid an accident. The car skidded and the tires screamed against the asphalt as the rear of the car began to slide out. In that frozen moment, time seemed to slow down, the normal rhythm of the night breaking into chaos. My heart pounded in my ears and I struggled to regain control, only to see that the figure had vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. We resumed our drive, but the unease only grew stronger. As we pressed on, a solitary streetlight emerged from the darkness, its weak glow revealing an old, battered sign that pointed to a ghost town named Golden, a place that should have been miles away. Every time we passed that sign, it felt as if the same strange force was pulling us into an endless loop. The road, which had once promised escape, now offered no reassurance, only more questions and a growing dread that we were being drawn into something beyond our control. Then came the haunting images. At one point, I caught a glimpse of a woman standing on the side of the road, her figure barely lit by the passing headlights. Her face was pale, marked by a horror that defied explanation, and behind her I sensed a gathering of shadowy figures. Their presence was silent yet overwhelming, as if they had been waiting for us all along. I tried to shake off the terror and convince myself that it was just a trick of the light, but the feeling of eyes constantly watching from the dark tree line was impossible to ignore. Adding to the disquiet, I noticed that the clock on my dashboard had frozen at exactly 3 a.m., just as my phone did. It was as if time itself had stopped, further blurring the line between reality and a nightmare. With every passing moment, the same unsettling scene repeated. The street light, the ghostly sign, and that nagging feeling that we were being tracked. It wasn't just the scenery that was looping. There was something about the night that felt designed to unnerve me. The terror escalated when Craig's demeanor began to change in the dark. At times, his face shifted between genuine fear and an unnervingly calm look, as if he were no longer entirely himself. I couldn't tell if he was succumbing to the same strange force that haunted the road, or if he was simply hiding his own terror behind a mask of quiet acceptance. In one chilling moment, as we sped past the familiar sign once more, I felt his eyes on me, a look that was both curious and unsettling, as if he knew more about the night's secrets than I did. Panic took hold as the road turned increasingly surreal. The ghostly figures grew bolder, and the spectral woman appeared again and again, always in the same place, always with that haunting look. I felt a desperate urge to escape. My foot pressed hard against the accelerator as I tried to outrun the horror that seemed to chase us. Every time we tried to break free, the strange loop tightened its grip, drawing us back toward the same ominous sign and that dreadful frozen 3 a.m. In the midst of this nightmare, the tension in the car reached a breaking point. I was filled with raw fear as the unnatural events piled up. Stopped clocks, ghostly figures, and the heavy feeling of unseen eyes watching us. In one final moment of terror, as the ghostly woman and her silent group closed in on our car, I lost control. The car veered violently off the road, colliding with a tree in a burst of metal and glass. In the chaos, I abandoned the vehicle, fleeing on foot as darkness swallowed the world around me. I later woke up in a hospital, battered and broken from the accident. Vanessa, my loving girlfriend, was there, her tears showing the shock and worry of that long, dreadful night. The doctors explained that I had escaped with only a deep cut that needed stitches, some bruised ribs, and a broken arm. A miracle, in a way, given the circumstances. The police also asked questions about that terrifying night, and as I recounted my experience, I learned that local people had whispered about similar events for many years. In the quiet after the accident, an email arrived from an unknown sender, a message from the young cashier at the gas station who had been there that fateful night. His note told me of unsettling accounts passed down through his family about strange happenings on these roads. He said that his father had seen odd things for years, and that the night I experienced was part of a pattern that defied all sense. Now, as I sit alone in the stillness of the night, trying to piece together the fragments of that terrible drive, one question haunts me more than any other. Who was Craig? The memory of his unnervingly calm smile and that fleeting look in his eyes lingers like a dark shadow in my mind. I am left to wonder if that night was merely a terrible accident, or if it was the start of something far more sinister, a mysterious force that twists reality, leaving behind only questions and a deep, unshakable fear of the open road. Every time I think back on that night, the silence of the dark roads and the frozen clock at 3 a.m. come rushing back. They remind me that some mysteries are best left unsolved. I no longer take late-night drives, for the terror of that night is etched in my memory, a chilling reminder that sometimes the line between what is real and what is not is thinner than we dare to imagine. My name is Alex, and I'm 24 years old. I work at a small diner in a quiet town, mostly known for its burgers and shakes. We don't have a huge menu, but locals seem to love what we offer. A few months ago, the owner decided to add a delivery service. It never made much sense to me since we were already short-staffed, and delivery didn't seem worth the trouble. But since we didn't get too many late-night orders, I was the only one assigned to make deliveries during the night shift, from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. That night, the diner was busier than usual. Large groups filled the booths, and the place was buzzing with conversation. The scent of grilled burgers and crispy fries filled the air. With few delivery orders coming in, I spent most of my shift helping out as a waiter. Every hour or so, I'd get a delivery, nothing out of the ordinary. Then, around 2:45 a.m., another order came in, just a single burger and fries. I grabbed the bag, checked the address, and hopped into my car. The destination was about 20 minutes away, so I entered it into Google Maps and started driving. The streets were mostly empty, the occasional streetlight casting long shadows on the pavement. Everything felt normal, just another delivery. If anything, I was happy to leave the loud diner for a bit and enjoy the quiet of the road. But something felt strange when I arrived. The GPS announced that I had reached my destination, but I wasn't at a house or an apartment. Instead, I had stopped in front of an old, abandoned gas station on the outskirts of town. There were no lights, no other cars, just a long stretch of empty road and a rusting building covered in graffiti. The gas pumps were missing, the windows were shattered, and an old sign hung crookedly, creaking slightly in the wind. Thinking I had entered the address wrong, I double-checked. But no, this was the exact location listed on the order. Confused, I decided to call the number provided. It barely rang for a second before someone picked up. "Hey, this is Alex from the diner. I'm trying to deliver your order, but I think there's a mistake with the address." Silence. I could hear breathing on the other end. Then, in a low voice, the person described my car and told me to look to my right. A cold chill ran down my spine. I slowly turned my head and saw nothing but darkness. Then, just beyond the faint glow of my headlights, something moved. A figure stood near the edge of the gas station lot, waving an arm. He was barely visible, just a shadow against the darkness. My gut told me something was off. Why was he standing all the way back there? Why not just wait near the road? Still, I hesitated only for a moment before stepping out of the car, holding the bag of food. The night was eerily silent. No cars, no wind, just stillness. Even the usual sounds of crickets or distant traffic were missing. As I walked toward him, I noticed something disturbing. He wasn't moving closer. He just stood there watching as I approached. His posture was stiff, unnatural. I stopped a few steps onto the pavement, suddenly feeling vulnerable. I raised the bag slightly. "Hey, you can come grab your order here." But he didn't move. Instead, his eyes darted around, looking behind me, scanning the area like he was making sure we were alone. My skin crawled. Something wasn't right. My instincts screamed at me to get back in my car. My fingers twitched, wanting to reach for my keys. But before I could react, he suddenly lunged forward. He grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the darkened gas station. He didn't shout, didn't speak. He just used all his strength to drag me. His grip was ice cold, his fingers digging into my skin. Panic surged through me. I fought back, struggling against his grip, but he was strong. My shoes scraped against the concrete as he pulled me closer to the abandoned building. The smell of damp, rotting wood filled my nose as we neared the entrance. Then, without thinking, I started throwing punches. I landed a few solid hits to his face, and after a few more, he finally let go. By then, we were only a few steps from the gas station's entrance. My heart pounded in my chest, and adrenaline kicked in. I stumbled backward, gasping for breath, then turned and ran. I didn't stop until I was inside my car, slamming the door shut and locking it. My hands fumbled to start the engine, my breath coming in short gasps. I barely had time to process what had happened before I saw movement again. The man had vanished into the shadows, but two more figures emerged from behind the gas station. They stood there for a second, watching me. Then, in eerie synchronization, they started walking toward my car. I didn't wait. I hit the gas and sped off down the road, my heart hammering against my ribs. My hands were shaking on the wheel, my mind racing with what had just happened. I drove straight to the police station and told them everything. But by the time officers arrived at the scene, the men were gone. No sign of them anywhere. The gas station was just as lifeless and abandoned as before. When I got back to work and told my manager what had happened, he checked the order details. All he had was a phone number, which was already disconnected, and a first name that was probably fake. My manager sent me home early with a free meal, but honestly, I didn't feel any better. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the events in my head, wondering what they had planned. Had I been just a little slower, had I hesitated just a second longer, I might not have made it out at all. Even now, every time I drive past that stretch of road, I can't help but glance toward that old gas station. It still stands there, abandoned, lifeless. But I swear, sometimes just at the edge of my vision, I see movement in the shadows. My name is Sam, and I'm 26 years old. I work in IT support for a large telephone company, in a small town in the Midwest. I usually help out with office systems and servers, nothing too exciting. I was based in a quiet part of town, but sometimes I had to travel to other sites when something went wrong. One cold winter night, I got an urgent call from a remote service center on the other side of the state. They were having problems with their system and nothing was working right. I had to drive all the way there, fix the issue, and then make my way back home. I left my warm office and began a long journey under the night sky. The drive took me through many lonely roads and winding country lanes. As I drove, the snow fell gently outside my windshield, and the road seemed endless. I was tired from a long day at work, but I knew I had to keep moving. The clock read 2:30 a.m., and the darkness made every twist of the road feel eerie and uncertain. I passed through small towns that were silent and empty, and soon found myself on a narrow road that led deep into the countryside. The road was bordered by fields and small woods. There was not a single car in sight, and the only sound was the hum of my engine and the soft patter of snow on the roof of my car. As I drove along, I noticed something unusual in the distance on my right. At first, it looked like a brief flash of light, but I wasn't sure if it was real or just a trick of my tired eyes. I kept my eyes on the road, trying to focus on my driving, but the light appeared again. A couple of small greenish lights flickering in the darkness. They moved slowly, as if they were floating in the air. At first, I thought they might be reflections from a sign or some stray headlights. However, as I continued driving, I noticed that the number of lights was growing. Soon, I counted at least 8 small glowing dots, all moving in an odd, unsteady pattern. They bobbed along near the edge of the road, coming a little closer with each passing minute. I felt a chill run down my spine. I tried to tell myself that it was just my mind playing tricks on me because I was so tired, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. My heart began to race, and my hands tightened on the steering wheel as I tried to maintain control on the twisty road. The lights grew brighter as I approached them. They weren't random anymore. They moved with a slow, deliberate pace, as if they were heading straight for my car. I had no idea what they were. My thoughts raced with wild ideas. Maybe they were just stray reflections from something normal, or perhaps my eyes were deceiving me in the dark. But another thought crossed my mind, and it made me shudder. What if they were not from this world? I eased off the gas pedal, trying to slow down a bit. I wanted to get a better look, even if I was scared. Every passing second felt like an eternity. I could see the lights more clearly now, and I noticed that they had a soft green glow. They seemed to float in the air near the roadside, dancing gently with the breeze. As I slowed, I began to wonder about the road ahead. I was on a little-known back road that I had never traveled before, and the darkness was thick around me. I could barely see anything beyond the faint outline of trees and distant fields. My imagination was running wild. What if these lights were signs of something dangerous? Maybe I was being watched, or maybe something was coming to get me. Then, as if my mind couldn't take it any longer, my fear reached its peak. Suddenly, without any warning, 4 animals dashed across the road right in front of my headlights. For a split second, the bright beams caught the eyes of the animals, making them glow just like the strange lights I had been watching. My heart skipped a beat. It wasn't aliens or a mysterious force after all. It was just a flock of sheep startled by my car's lights. I slammed on the brakes and my car skidded slightly on the icy road. For a moment, I sat there in complete silence, too embarrassed to believe how my mind had twisted the scene into something scary. I couldn't help but laugh at myself. My fear had turned a common sight into a terrifying mystery. But even as I laughed, my hands were still trembling, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off about that long, dark road. I slowly drove on, the incident playing over in my head. Every so often, I glanced to the side, half expecting to see those greenish lights return. But all I saw was the gentle fall of snow and the soft silhouettes of trees. As the minutes passed, the road began to clear up. I thought about the long night I had just experienced. I remembered every moment, the loneliness, the strange lights, and the sudden rush of fear when the sheep ran across the road. I wondered how much of it was real, and how much was just my tired mind playing tricks on me. I kept driving until I reached a small town where the streets were lit by warm street lights, and life seemed to return to normal. Yet, even in that safe glow, I couldn't forget the unnerving feeling I had on the back roads. The experience stayed with me for days. I would often find myself thinking back on that night, questioning what I had really seen. Later, I spoke with some friends about the strange encounter. They told me that long drives on empty roads could easily make anyone imagine things, especially when you're tired. But I couldn't help wondering if there was something more to it. A small reminder that, in the dark, even the simplest things can look mysterious and even a bit scary. The memory of that night taught me a lot about fear and the power of our own minds. It reminded me that sometimes our imagination can make ordinary events feel like scenes from a horror movie. Even though I now know that what I saw was nothing more than a trick of the light on a cold, lonely road, the experience still sends a shiver down my spine every time I think about it. Every time I drive on quiet, empty roads, I slow down a little, remembering that night. I still see a flash of green light in my mind's eye, and my heart begins to beat a little faster. It serves as a reminder that fear can sneak up on you when you least expect it, turning the normal into something strange and unsettling. I share this story not to scare you too much, but to remind everyone that even on a routine drive home, the dark can play tricks on us. Sometimes what looks like a mystery in the night turns out to be a simple, everyday scene. Yet, in that moment, our mind can transform it into a story that lingers long after the journey is over. So, if you ever find yourself driving late at night on a lonely road, and you see a strange light flickering in the distance, remember my story. It might just be the light of a far-off sign, or even the eyes of a frightened animal reflecting your headlights. But until you know for sure, it's natural to feel a little nervous, to feel that chill of the unknown. That night, I learned that even the most ordinary drive can become a story worth telling. A drive where every shadow, every glimmer of light, and every sound has the power to spark your imagination, making you question what is real. And though I laugh now at the memory of my own fear, I also know that sometimes in the deep quiet of the night, the world can seem full of secrets just waiting to be discovered. If these stories made you rethink your night drive plans, hit that like button and share it with someone who loves a good scare. And don't forget to subscribe. You never know when the next chilling story will drop.